Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to check out another video from Mark Felton. This one is, did German paratroopers land in England? No, from the video we watched the other day, they certainly didn't come across the English channel. So I'm excited to check this out and hear more about it. Mark Felton, of course, does an incredible job. I will link this video in the description in case you want to check it out yourself or check out any of his other videos. They are all great. Can't go wrong. I will also put a link in the description over to Patreon. We're watching the It Crowd over there right now. You can watch for free. So absolutely go check it out. It's all unedited. So it goes up pretty quickly. And I will also have a link of how you can support the channel right here on YouTube. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into this.
Did German paratroopers land in England in World War II? It sounds like something out of a Jack Higgins novel, and it is indeed an intriguing question. And the answer is yes, in a manner of speaking, though not quite in the way you perhaps imagine. Men certainly landed dressed in uniforms very similar to German paratroopers, the famous Fallschirmjäger, but they were not part of the Luftwaffe. Instead, they were from the Abwehr, German military intelligence. And as I'm sure you've now guessed, these men were spies. This video isn't about German espionage in wartime Britain. That's an enormous subject on its own. And if you are interested, you should check out the Josef Jacobs website that delves in great detail into one single spy's mission in Britain. Link in the description box below.
Let me know if we should look at that one.
It is about the mechanics of getting such men to Britain in the first place and how they were equipped. It is the part of the story of German spies that is largely glossed over in the history books. They just parachuted in and off they went. Surely there was more to it than that. British secret agents were dropped into German-occupied Europe by a special Black Ops squadron of the RAF. Did the Germans have the same? British agents dropped wearing semi-military uniforms and helmets. What about the German ones? For example, this is the kit of a German spy who was never caught, but he was wearing this when he landed on British soil. He then divested himself of this military equipment and disappeared and was never found. It consists of a Luftwaffe summer flying suit, a German paratrooper's steel helmet, and even his parachute was a Fallschirmjäger version, and the canopy was camouflaged.
Wow!
To some home guard or policeman, such a figure did not resemble a shot-down German pilot, but instead the tough young German paratroopers famous for their exploits in the Netherlands and Belgium. And many German spies dressed in this manner actually landed during the height of the German invasion scare of 1940, when everyone in southeast England was on guard for German paratroopers, who would of course spearheaded any German invasion attempt. When war began between Britain and Germany in September 1939, the Germans already had several agents active in the British Isles. But more were required, and between July 1940, the height of the Battle of Britain, and June 1941, the Abwehr dropped by parachute dozens of agents, almost all of whom were caught, with MI5, the security service, turning many into double agents. Those who refused to cooperate being executed by firing squad, including being shot in the Tower of London.
Wow!
Although one more agent was dropped by parachute after this period, the July 1940 to June 1941 period was the high point of Abwehr parachute operations over Britain, though agents were also inserted in other ways. Some landed by U-boat. In Scotland, Luftwaffe seaplanes operating from Norway dropped off some German agents who were rowed ashore in rubber boats. However, The primary method of inserting German spies was by parachute. The Abwehr created a small but specialized flying unit whose only task was the dropping of secret agents over Britain and Ireland, command being given to a specialist in long-range reconnaissance and navigation, Luftwaffe Hauptmann or Captain Karl Gartenfeld. Gartenfeld initially helped to train agents for the rigors of insertion by air at a base at Oranienburg near Berlin, where the Abwehr established a training and parachute school. In the early days, German agents generally received some actual parachute training, including 1 or 2 practice jumps from a Junkers W-34 plane, generally piloted by Gartenfeld himself. Even though parachuting is inherently dangerous, particularly correct landing to avoid injury or death, as the war hotted up into 1940, many agents did not receive parachute training prior to jumping over England. It seems that the Abwehr decided that the likelihood of them injuring themselves with multiple jumps was too risky, and instead making only one jump, the actual jump, was common sense. However, more than one agent was nonetheless injured on landing, largely owing to the fact they didn't know how to land properly, leading to their capture. The primary aircraft used by the secret Abwehr flight was a single Heinkel He-111 twin-engine bomber adapted for secret missions. There was also, purportedly, a Dornier 17 and a Junkers 88 in this flight. The Heinkel 111 was painted matte black, as all insertion missions took place at night, also meaning that the aircrew needed first-class navigation to land the agent anywhere near his intended drop zone, hence the employment of Captain Gartenfeld, a top pilot and navigator. The Heinkel's bomb bay was modified, the racks that normally held the bomb load in a vertical position being removed, to enable an agent, perhaps also with another container landing by parachute, to drop from the belly of the plane into its slipstream. As mentioned, German agents dropped wearing German military uniforms. In one famous case, that of spy Captain Hermann Goertz, as he was a serving military officer, he dropped over Ireland in summer 1940, wearing his full Luftwaffe officer's uniform, including World War I decorations, under his flying suit. More usually, the agent wore...
That's wild. Like, it doesn't make any logical sense. Why would you do that? Why would you, if you're trying to be a spy, or going undetected somewhere, if you're taking all of these precautions to paint the plane black and go in at night, like, why on earth would you then take off your flying suit to just have full German military garb? That's crazy.
A civilian suit under his Luftwaffe beige flying suit, as worn by aircrew, to protect his clothes and prevent snagging of the parachute lines. Over the suit, he wore a parachute harness, and it appears a standard German Paratroopers parachute, rather than the better Luftwaffe aircrew version. The German paratrooper version was not steerable in the air. Instead, the man simply hung from the shroud lines. He had no means of controlling, and in fact didn't use his arms at all. To us today, it looks extremely primitive and unnatural compared to modern parachutes, or even World War II British and American ones. No reserve parachute was worn, but a special jump pack was worn strapped to the chest that contained the agent's wireless set so he could communicate with Berlin, which was built into a small leather suitcase so it could be carried around in public, along with some personal items of clothing and so on. To protect the agents' heads, they wore standard-issue Luftwaffe Paratrooper M1938 steel helmets, including Luftwaffe Eagle decal on one side. And the parachute was often a camouflage canopy, as dropping at night with a standard aircrew white silk canopy could have been seen in low-light conditions. As well as carrying forged papers, British ration books and so on, agents also carried considerable amounts of hard currency, British pounds and US dollars, to finance their missions, and all of the agents dropped armed. The favoured pistols were small and easily concealable in civilian clothing. Usual models were the Mauser Model 14 7.65mm or 32 ACP 8-shot semi-automatic. or the Mauser WTP-1 6.35mm or 25 ACP vest pocket model, plus a quantity of ammunition. Finally, all agents dropped armed with a knife that could be used to cut yourself free from parachute lines if you hung up on a tree and so on, and also, of course, it was a useful and silent weapon. The method of inserting spies by air was well practiced, operating out of airfields in German-occupied France, principally Chartres and Reims-Saint-Jacques. The black-painted Heinkel 111 would take off in the dark and fly at low altitude across the English Channel to avoid detection by British radar. Insertions were always carried out when major air raids were being conducted by the Luftwaffe over Britain, so the Heinkel could be lost amongst the many blips on British radar at that time. On reaching the English coast, Captain Gartenfeld would bring the Heinkel up to about 20,000 feet, exposing the plane to British radar, though in 1940–41 RAF night fighters were fairly primitive. The biggest dangers to the Germans were being caught in searchlights and then blasted by anti-aircraft guns or running into a barrage balloon cable. Following the prearranged course to the drop zone, Gartenfeld would put the Heinkel into a shallow dive for many miles, and depending on weather conditions, the agent would jump at between 1,500 and 3,000 feet over the landing zone. Once the agent was clear, the bomb bay doors would be shut, and Gartenfeld and his crew would head back for the coast, flying back to France at low level. The agents used static line parachutes. That is, the parachute release was connected to the aircraft, and all they had to do was fling themselves into the darkness. The ripcord would be automatically pulled and the parachute deployed. The final important piece of kit the agent carried on the drop was strapped to their leg, a specially modified military entrenching tool with a shortened handle. If the agent landed uninjured, he would gather his parachute, divest himself of his Luftwaffe flight suit and paratrooper's helmet, and then bury all of these items as quickly as possible before hiding the shovel. And now, dressed in his civilian clothing and carrying his suitcase containing the radio, begin his mission. So there you have it. Dozens of times in 1940–41, armed German agents, dressed just like paratroopers, descended under parachutes all over Britain and began their nefarious missions. Almost all were caught, with very few managing to remain at large for very long, and even fewer actually achieving very much on the espionage front.
How would you know,
though? A few were successful, but the British government has yet to fully...
How would you know what you don't know? I mean, you know the ones you caught, right? But, you don't know how many came in. That's wild. That's so crazy. It's so long ago. I mean, it's not that long ago, but it is. So, if you think about these kind of primitive methods of doing this, how far they've come.
Release their files, so it's the failures that we know most about. Throughout the rest of the war, more German spies were infiltrated into Britain by a variety of methods. One more by parachute, as I mentioned. Some arriving posing as refugees on ships from neutral countries like Portugal and Spain. Others came ashore from U-boats. But overall, the huge effort made by the Abwehr to insert well over 100 secret agents into Britain and Ireland was largely a wasted effort, as MI5 performed well above average in combating Hitler's spies in Britain. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark.
That was really interesting. I guess, obviously, spies exist. They exist now. They exist then. But I guess, I, for one, never really thought about how they got it. I just assumed that they would go in there, like it said, on boats and stuff like that, posing, with, different forged passports and IDs and stuff like that. But you don't think about them just parachuting in and So that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. I wouldn't mind learning some more about that. The one that it talked about in the beginning, I'll have to go back and look at the names. Um, I would definitely be interested in watching some of that. Let me know if you all would be as well. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, share, drop any comments if you want to add on to any of this. And yeah, have a great day. Thanks for watching, guys.